Are you conscious of your addiction? Refuse to be defined by it? Not satisfied with living your life on the surface? Are you drawn to deeper meaning and purpose? And believe that it's possible to grow through your addiction to experience true freedom? Well, welcome home. Share the journey from addiction to freedom with your host, Michael Gregory.
Well, welcome to another episode of From Addiction to Freedom. I'm here with a very special friend of a friend. His name is Patrick Murphy, and he's actually been a really avid listener, engaging with the Addiction to Freedom podcast and YouTube from almost the beginning, I think. And so I was kind of interested to bring him into the show and have a chat, because he's also a really interesting guy. And we've really talked about some fascinating topics. You know, very quickly we started talking about emotions and what they are. And then we very quickly moved into who is experiencing that emotion, who's observing that, who we are, what we are. And then we kept on weaving backwards and forwards around that, talking about different aspects of life and freedom and what freedom really means. So I really encourage you to listen to this episode, and I think you'll get quite a lot out of it. I certainly did, and Pat said he did as well. So welcome again, and thanks, Pat, for being here. Well, we're here with Patrick Murphy. He's actually a guest of, and kind of an avid follower of the Addiction to Freedom podcast and YouTube channel. And he also happens to be a very good friend of a very good friend of mine. And you know how birds of a feather flock together. You know, we've met up a few times. We've had some interesting conversations. So when, I don't know how the idea came along, but thought it might be interesting just to have a bit of an episode talking to Pat. So welcome, Pat.
Good morning, Michael.
Yeah, so it's morning for you.
No, it's evening for me, morning for you. Yeah.
Morning for me and evening for you. That's right, because we're in different time zones, but even though we've got the same accent.
I'm so excited for the opportunity, Michael. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Well, so am I, actually. And I was going to ask you, I was wondering, curious really in a way, what you found engaging about the podcast and YouTube, Addiction to Freedom.
Well, the friend of a friend recommended that I listen to you, and he has done for a long time. He also recommended that I buy Ada, and I did. I ignored that as well in the early days. But he recommended it because I've been on a quest for the definition of freedom for some time, and asking myself what it means. What does it mean to be free? So in my exploration of that, of course, I had to listen to your podcast and see where you're coming from, and I've enjoyed it a lot. It's been very good. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Welcome. It's just kind of in a way an exploration for my journey, as well as just learning and meeting people who are on the similar journey, or
I pigeonholed you. Do you know? So yeah. So I've identified you. Yeah. I've identified you as a Stoic existentialist.
Stoic.
Yeah.
Help me unpack that for those people that don't know what Stoicism or the Stoics are.
Well, we often existentialism, right? So we often, with the Stoics, we often confuse the word Stoicism with being emotionless and resilient, and certainly resilience is part of Stoicism, but the emotionless is more, in a Stoic sense, is about rational emotions. So existentialism, of course, is about existence is this reality that, that things are, it's an understanding of existence. I couldn't give you the definition. I could Google it, but you trained as a philosopher, didn't you?
Yeah. So I didn't go heavily into the existentialists, but I'm kind of aware of that kind of paradigm, I suppose.
Reality is here, and we make up meanings about what it is. It's like Ancient us looking at geese flying across the sky, and an event happens and we say, rightio, those geese mean that happens. So the next time geese go across the sky, we base our future decisions around the thing happening that those geese signify. And so we take the same action when the same events occur, unless we can make a break in that chain of reasoning.
And then unless we find that geese always go that direction at this time of year.
They may have at one stage when we were 3-year-old, but when we make the decisions of an adult based on the stimulus response that we developed as a 3-year-old, we're not going to be successful adults.
Yeah. Well, that right there is a big can of worms, isn't it? Because, if we talk about freedom and making decisions based on our 3-year-old
I know
program.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. And Stoic is a very practical living philosophy.
So then that's something that I don't know a lot about, even though I studied the Greeks a little bit, but not necessarily Stoicism. So when you said rational emotions, what did you mean by that?
Okay, so will the emotion serve you? Will the emotion accomplish your goals? Is it good? Or will it lead to an irrational situation that you don't want? So, you would know Seneca. Did you Seneca? Marcus Aurelius?
I haven't studied a lot of him, but yeah.
I'm so surprised, Michael. Your education is lacking. I thought you were classically educated, man.
I've become more okay with being ignorant because there's so much to know, isn't there, in terms of facts and figures and all that sort of stuff.
And I guess you can approach it in what you do as tabula rasa, as a blank slate.
Yeah, well, if our 3-year-old brain is operating, then whether or not we started with a blank slate, it's hard to know. In terms of our mind stream, in terms of our, but rather than getting into that, I'm kind of interested in just emotions in general. Like we talk about irrational emotions or irrational emotions, like emotions that don't serve us, but even emotions themselves, what are they, if you know what I mean? Because we all kind of live with them. And at the moment I kind of view emotions as this kind of complex that arises, in a situation. And I think a lot of it has fight or flight involved.
I would agree with that.
For example, so things like fear, anger, I wouldn't say sadness so much, but fear and anger, they just, in a way, arise when there's a situation that's kind of threatening, perhaps, or something that we don't want to happen.
Well, that's pretty interesting. Yeah, would you say that that managing your fear and anger is a key to freedom?
Well, in the sense that that phenomena, that experience, causes you to take actions that you may that are kind of not necessarily something that you've freely chosen. You can end up reacting, so to speak. I say that is a lack of freedom if you're not able to clearly see the whole situation and then choose. Let's say when we say choosing in that situation, I would say like a direct, immediate response to the whole situation, whereas anger tends to put a filter on, and so do the other emotions almost. But if we break it down before,
anger's a sharp sword.
Yeah, it could be actually a very a big baton that just smashes everything. But if I think about emotions, I think, well, often so there's a situation, and then there's some kind of situation occurring around us. Let's say some kind of thought about what that is, whether that's what does that mean, kind of thing, and then this feeling arises. And depending on what we think that means. And often that can, so where we get into trouble there is when the meaning that we take it to be can be conditioned by something that's not part of the situation, a memory or situation in the past, particularly if the subconscious is programmed fight or flight to react to a certain word or tone of voice or prospective threat or whatever. And then we're not actually responding to the whole. We're responding to whatever is reacting in us from the past or even in the present situation. So I think that happens with most of the emotions. Well, but although sadness is a different one, isn't it? Because
sadness is a difficult one, and part of the base of what I think you're pointing to is that there's always an initial interpretation of what will trigger happiness, what will trigger sadness, what are the triggers, and how do we, as thinking creatures, how do we associate events with the emotional response? And so it has to be, a lot of them are very ancient parts of our brain, the monkey brain, active, the lizard brain,
Yeah. So.
And who's observing me being happy?
Exactly. Exactly. And is the me, what me is experiencing that emotion? What me is the one that the emotion is trying to come from or about? Let's say the anger. It's about some kind of threat, dealing with some threat to me, or something that's gone wrong that this anger feeling arises. What me is that's all about? The anger is about. So there's that me, and then there's the one, like you said, who's observing that occurring.
I find this a very difficult concept to get my head around. I can't identify that at all, and I struggle with it. It comes to me and slips away, and it's such an intangible separation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, who's experiencing and who's observing, and which me is it?
Yeah. Well, there's a really simple exercise actually that I think that we could try.
Sure, why not?
Yeah. So what if you were to feel like inside the middle of your head right now, just with your feeling sense. Yeah, right in the centre, right in the centre. Just feel in there with your feeling sense. And so, in a sense, the focus of your attention is feeling in the middle of your head. So, what are you feeling?
Nothing.
Okay, keep feeling that. Okay, so now keep feeling that. Is there any stress there?
No, not really. I mean, there's a sense of something that I find hard to define. I mean, I would say there's it feels there's a solid a solid feel, but it's spacious. But I might be making that up because I'm searching for it. Maybe I'm looking to create what I think I should be finding.
Well, just feel what you can feel. Like just feel what you can feel. So if there's a sensation, right, it's best if your eyes are open because otherwise the imagination comes in. So if there is a sensation, is there a sensation in the middle of your head or not?
No.
So the sensation, if there was one, it'd be a different part of the head. It'd be the external more. But the internal, generally speaking, there's generally blank.
Yeah, well, there is a blank. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about the blank while we still experience it. So does that blank have any edges? Where are they? Where's the edge?
I guess it's in my imagination, but it feels as though it's in my head. It feels cubic.
Well, so that's where your imagination is coming in now. But if you were just to go back to the feeling sense, purely the feeling sense, and feel that blank, just while you're feeling the blank, is there any edges to it?
No.
No. And is there any difference between here and there? Is there any centre to it?
Well, I feel as though there is, but I suspect that's my imagination again. I feel as though the centre...
Yeah, that's a concept.
The centre...
It's a concept.
Yeah. So it feels as though the centre's starting where I'm looking to focus in the middle of my head.
Yeah.
And it just...
Yeah, but if you try and find the edges...
Yeah, no, they go beyond.
The more you do that, the more you realise there's no centre.
Yeah. Yeah.
And is it peaceful?
It's sort of nothing. Like it's peaceful, but stilling the mind to feel it, is maybe is the peace, because to feel it, I need to still my mind, still the noise.
Yeah, and there are thoughts there.
Yeah, there are thoughts
we're talking, there's thoughts, but there's also things that we're hearing, seeing, and all of that, but that's all still occurring. And if you think if there's no edges, if you feel if there's no edges, what's the difference between, we have this concept that we stop where the body stops, but in this feeling this, it doesn't really have any edges, does it?
No.
And when we're seeing, like now, if you can let go of the middle of your head a little bit, but still stay with the feeling of that. So everything that we're seeing without looking at anything is really not separate from that.
No, true.
And then if we ask, where is me? And we still keep feeling that. We still keep feeling that blank. Yeah, well, there really is no me, is there?
Well, it is a construct, and that's what interested me about your podcast. Is that the construct that we are the thoughts that we're addicted to, and the thing that surprised me about you about Addicted to Freedom was, that I thought it was going to be substances to start with, but then to take it to that the conceptual basis for the reality that we create and the futures that we're always creating are based on the thoughts that we're addicted to. And that's the existential aspect, that we're addicted to them because they brought us results, known results, whether the results were good or bad, but we're addicted to that as an identity.
Yeah. And we always our attention always wants to engage with the thoughts. Thoughts seem to create something solid out of the nothing. If we go back to the nothing for a minute, just to feel that blank, and then we ask the question, where am I? There is no I. And so then we say, well, what is there? And we can only apply certain, like we can't really describe it because it's like chopping up something that isn't there. You can't, the concept is like a piece or a snapshot of a particular aspect of phenomena, but there's nothing to snapshot. But you could say that that there is awareness. You can say that about, but that again is a concept that we're applying to the nothing, to the blank, to the no me. So that's why I can understand why you said it's hard to get your head around who's viewing, because there is no one.
Yeah.
And that's a weird...
And there's only reality to view. But if from the emotional point of view, you've got no I observing no me.
Say that again? No I. You mean the constructed me being observed by nothing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that kind of, the conceptual mind doesn't have the apparatus to handle that.
But the constructed me feels conscious.
How do you? How do you mean that? How do you mean that?
Well, who can say I am conscious? Like, who can say I think, therefore I am? Because I mean, Like if and maybe it just struck me that I think, therefore I am, that Descartes was talking about. He was talking about I, not the constructed identity I, but he was talking about the observer I.
Exactly, because in his letters, private letters, he describes that the experience of the cogito is, I think, therefore I am. He says that's less of a logical syllogism, like I think, all human beings who think exist, all things that think exist, therefore I exist. He says it's less of that and more of a spontaneous realization of his own existence. But he had to frame it for that period in history. He had to frame it like he was trying to find some mathematical certainty. He had to frame it in that kind of rational way for people to accept it. But the truth of it was really an immediate self-awareness of his own existence. And so for me, if I look at the constructed me from the point of view of no me, then all of this, it's no different to all of this. It's all, whatever we're seeing, feeling, touching, even the body, it's all just phenomena, and not just, but it is phenomena at play, including the complex called Michael, which is really just a set of memories, likes and dislikes, addictions to thought, to not this, to want pleasure, to not want pain, and all that kind of stuff, and all that's going on in this, as so-called me, but really, it's just part of the flow. It's like another river flowing in the me that is ever present as no thing.
So when you work with addictions, because I know that you're a specialist and have for a long time worked with people who have addictions, do you work on the constructed addictions? Is that a deliberate thing to separate out the two identities so that you can manage and plan the future of the constructed identity?
Well, that'd be really interesting to do that consciously, but actually what I do generally is not talk about that. More like I just use that, what we just did then, a version of that technique as a step in a more prescribed way to eliminate cravings, because there is no craving there, right? Like you try it when you next have a craving, and you do that, and there'll be no craving. So simply use that to help people get rid of the craving, and then what happens is there's a fight or flight reaction, right? That often occurs when a craving occurs. So you have to repeat, and there's this sort of a set step-by-step process where you can retrain the subconscious not to generate the fight or flight when that craving occurs, because the craving is perceived as a signal for future danger. So you use the technique, eliminate the craving. Oh, there's no future danger. So then fight or flight has to disappear because it's no longer necessary. But that has to be retrained and retrained and retrained until the subconscious no longer generates fight or flight, and cravings don't automatically get generated. But the thing about that is that you can apply this to anything. Like, for example, anger. Next time anger arises, if you observe the truth of what we are, then there can be sensations in the body that might be normally associated with anger, but they're just sensations. There can be thoughts. But if you're observing from the point of view of what we are, they don't have any power anymore. They're just floating thoughts, and all the power is taken out of it, and then it dissipates. So the snowball, the fire is not recreating itself, and it just all dissipates. And the more that happens, I was just going to say, sorry, the more that happens, the more that, like, the whole system settles down and stops generating all of this bluster around the constructed me. The constructed me starts to become a bit more transparent and resonating of the nature of what we really are.
The nature of what we really are.
Well, in the sense of what, like when we were experiencing that, like, where am I? And there's no me. So that is the constant.
Yeah.
All the other stuff is always changing.
I agree, and to me, it seems that because we're creatures that don't really embrace change, part of our psychological risk management is that change is often danger and we're cautious around it. That in managing change, we create those meanings that the process you just described redefines. So we create a future not based on past experience and definitions and addictions. We attempt over time to create a future free of those.
Yeah, exactly. And interesting to talk about that, because often what we do is we just create another conceptual imaginary construct that's better than the previous one. We're just, in a way, trading one conceptual emotional construct, loosely put, for another one, and we constantly trying to better the one, trying to get to a better and better one. Like we say, when I retire, it'll be better, or when I go on holidays, it'll be better, or when I get this new house. And all of these are just within the realm of the constructed me interacting with phenomena. Well, it's interacting with itself, really.
Which is it's necessary, isn't it? Like, we don't want to reconstruct. There's parental guidance warning. Kids at home, fire will still burn.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, isn't it? That phenomena has patterning. That's the interesting thing, that, it's not as if when we say the constructed me, we can't say that it, well, at least in my experience, it hasn't disappeared altogether.
You've made some. I was just going to say, you've made some extraordinarily brave decisions recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, courageous.
Well, what Pat's talking about is that I sold everything, and I let some. There was a couple of things, like, the whiskey tumblers that Mobsy gave me and things like that. I've lent those, people are mining them for me, but just the sentimental things. But everything else I just sold, and I moved to the UK to start the Stop Smoking program in the UK.
Brilliant. And, so good. I'm so pleased with your story.
Well, it's funny, because it's just been a bit of a flow. It hasn't. I mean, yes, there's some, lots of things to do, but it's amazing how much of a flow it's been, even though I've been preparing for it for a long time. But which kind of has made me start to wonder about, is there some kind of synchronizing of the, phenomena? Are they these flows? Like flow of a whole culture, flow of a family, flow of relationships, flow of work, flow of yourself.
I knew this guy once, and he was the manager of a pasta restaurant, and he had a theory, and he'd done diagrams and put together a book about thoughts are broadcast at the earth from somewhere, and 100,000 people will, what was that? That was a thought, and won't become conscious of it. 100 people will think, that's sort of interesting. And he broke it down to like 1 or 2 will maybe activate that thought in the world. So he believed in it's like the Jungian subconscious, but he believed it was being beamed in from outer space.
Oh, okay.
But I agree. Like the subconscious is, like, I think that sometimes it feels as though it is a pool and there are waves.
Yeah, yeah. And archetypes could, in a way, aspects of the flow. Like, I think Jung kind of saw them as motivating forces within the psyche. like for nobody, anyone that doesn't know what archetypes are, we're talking about the idea that the psyche has a structure, just like the hand has 5 fingers in general, that our subconscious and unconscious has structures, and these structures can be visible in dreams or myths. For example, and every movie, pretty much plays out, the interactions of archetypes. For example, the hero going on a quest and to save the world, or there's the mother and a father and a son and a lover and and a shadow, and all of these archetypes, the sun, the moon. Yeah, so I think that you're right there in the sense that I don't know about the beaming in from outside. I don't know. I just don't have it yet.
No, that was just a really interesting conversation to have, and that he put the effort into it. It was so good. Thinkers, why not, Yeah,
exactly. Follow it. That's right. If you're gonna follow a track of thought, be committed to it, its, all the way. Yeah.
Yeah, we need more eccentrics, don't we?
Yeah, well, I don't think either way, I don't think you can go wrong by finding a dead end.
No. Well, because it's not a dead end.
It's not a dead end because now you've understood that bit and you realise, well, I'm going to try a different way.
Right, and you keep going with the flow, like you start the concept and you move with it, and like buying a Toyota Hi-Ace and having it fitted out with surfboards on the top, you start to notice a few on the road.
Yeah, exactly.
You become more aware of and more focused in. My father called it his divine obsession. Well, all sorts of things. Like he's a crazy inventor, and he's done so well, and like he has just got such an active mind, and he would research so well, and he would come up with ideas and concepts and become obsessed by them. And he would deliberately become obsessed and call it his divine obsession. And I imagine Thomas Edison was the same. And I can think of Thomas Edison's wife and my mum and Mrs. Edison calling from the kitchen, "Thomas, that light bulb's failed 9,000 times. Will you stop it?"
When will you wake up to yourself?
No, I know.
In a real time.
All of that. Yeah.
But interesting that he calls it his divine obsession, not just an obsession. So he's obviously thinking that his obsession is coming from...
Oh, the muses are singing to him.
Yeah, external or, other than outside of him, in a sense, inspiration.
Yeah, I know, right? It is interesting, but he was of a Catholic generation, and Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich and How to Make Friends and Influence People were based in, a Christian philosophy, and so so he saw that as in that sense the divinity that he understood to bring things in from the outside, so that, again, like the rays of ideas being beamed in from outer space, he didn't look at the Jungian pool. He looked at, where does this come from? Somewhere outside of me, right? Because all of a sudden there's this concept and divinity.
Yeah, well, so you think that your friend was trying to explain the sudden appearance of ideas, like, oh, there's an idea, like a muse, and your father was talking about this divine inspiration, in the sense perhaps trying to explain, where do these ideas come from? Maybe they come from a divine source.
It's like Darwin's Journey of the Beagle. When he put out, I think that he and another guy were working on the same evolutionary theory at the same time. Yeah. These ideas, they seem to arise. People seem to have the same idea at the same time.
You know about the 100 Monkeys
typing
experiment?
Shakespeare?
No. Where they taught these monkeys how to do something that they'd never done before, this troop of monkeys, and then 100 kilometres away, another troop of monkeys suddenly started doing it.
Oh, right. No, I didn't know.
Yeah, and that and I marry that up with I forget what the name of the experiment is in where you can split an atom and the particles spin off, and and then one hits something and changes its direction of spin, and then the other one, no matter where in the world, will also change its direction of spin, which means that there's an instantaneous communication of
And no limits to it.
no limits to it. I realised that I need to plug in my power. I forgot to do that. Just one sec.
All right. I'll entertain everybody in the meantime.
What are you going to do with the band? So that is something, that I have kind of contemplated, the idea that, well, where do ideas come from? Because when you talk about the our, let's say who is observing, who's present, well, ideas seem to arise within that. Everything seems to arise within that, in the who that is present. If we experience it from the way that we were doing earlier, if we explore that, the more we explore that, there is nothing separate from that. And we're not, anything that's separate is really like here and there is two concepts. In direct experience of me, let's say, or nobody, let's say nobody, or the nothing is separate from that. Because if thought, so then thoughts come and say, well, yes, there is. There's the window there, and there's me here. But that's just referring to so then that's referring to the separate, the body as a defined set of phenomena, and the window is a defined set. But suddenly forgetting that none of that is, none of that's available to us if we didn't have awareness of everything at once, of the window and me. And so in the sense, the window and me is arising by virtue of awareness, it's within awareness. And then thoughts are within awareness too.
So would you say then, with that understanding, and if you think about, someone who reaches a level of enlightenment or consciousness or detachment that you and I might strive for, but might stumble across by accident, hopefully. But would you say that is?
Hurry on.
Yeah. would you say that's like that point in their existence and their concept of self is purely then the watcher, not the constructed I? Is that where they get to?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I can only say where I'm at the moment, or the so-called me. The so-called me, the constructed me is just another phenomena, like this water bottle, within awareness. And awareness, who is aware is nobody. And who is aware doesn't have any boundaries.
Right, but
everything is within that.
The Michael Gregory that is a physical construct in time and space is also a mental construct in time and space.
It can only that and well, time and space are also being conceptual, and not to say that it doesn't refer to something. Of course, it refers to something, but it's each of those are very limited because they point to something. But if we start to say who is aware of that, and what is the nature of that it's aware, that who is aware, and it's not even a who, it's a nobody, it's an ever-presence awareness, and that everything is occurring within that. I mean, and even to say that is then bringing in more concepts, to say within, without.
Definitions and meaning and language.
Yeah, but mostly we don't allow ourselves to sit in nothing. Let's say we are always being engaged with the the awareness is always attached to phenomena, and and phenomena also including concepts. So it's concepts, phenomena interacting with other phenomena, and always just, it's like being inside the matrix and not being aware that there's a matrix, and just constantly, going from one thing to another, as opposed to allowing just ourselves to realize for a sec, hang on a minute, who is aware here, or what is aware here, and then realizing nobody's aware, there just is awareness, and this awareness is not separate from anything. All of this other stuff inside, let's say, the matrix, where we spend 99.9% of our time to try and find some kind of happiness or freedom, and actually that freedom is already present in the very nature of the nobody that we are. Because in the nobody that we are is inherently peace. I was going to say, that's what, like, if you talk to people about what they really want, I say, I want to go on a holiday. Why do you want to go on a holiday? Oh, because I'm just so stressed at the moment and I just want to relax. So why do you want to relax? What is that? And then eventually you get down, you go down the rabbit hole and you realise, well, they just want to sit and do nothing.
So Miss South Africa 1974 was right when she said she just wants world peace. You know, that peace and the striving for peace is something that our culture hasn't accepted that as a valid rationale for, as a valid goal, personal peace, world peace, global peace, peace to you, peace to me. It's not been something that's supported in our culture anyway.
Yeah, and I think that kind of peace that she was referring to is all people's not people having war.
It was a bad joke.
But no, absolutely.
Hey, but what I'm wondering is, do you think that the nobody that I am, well, the nobody that watches my construct and yours, do you think that they have individualities as nobodies?
Well, I've been thinking about that actually recently, because my sister died recently. I don't know if you know.
My condolences.
And, yeah, thanks. And I was just wondering, I've been talking with people about what part of us dies and what part of us continues. And because I've experienced being out of the body and still being aware, then that gives me evidence that we can exist without the body.
I don't know that story. Do your listeners know that story? I don't think you've mentioned it.
No, I haven't talked about that. Oh, okay. Well, I'm sure many people have experienced being out of their body, but I can tell it if you want.
Well, if you want.
Well, okay. I was out of a Vipassana meditation course, and I was sitting there, and it's a silent retreat, and this was the second time I'd been. I decided that I wasn't going to move during the meditation sessions, because what happens is you get various pains in the body, and they're not actually caused by your posture or anything. They're actually caused by, they call them sankharas, past aspects to do with the body mind being released. And so I just decided, and I noticed, that as soon as, if I'd be sitting there in this, having this pain in, say, my head or my hip or something, and then as soon as the meditation stops, even though I hadn't actually moved, I opened my eyes, stopped meditating, boom, pain gone. So then I realised, well, the pain is not to do with any posture thing, it's simply the process. So I'm not going to move. Because normally you just move around all the time. You're doing this to try and be comfortable, and that's just a fallacy. So I decided not to move, and so I had this. So in this one session, I had all this pain, and it was just got more and more and more, and then suddenly it was like, boom! I had all this energy going through my body like a stick man. If you draw a stick man, the legs and the arms and the head, it was like there were lines like that going through, and all of the pain just disappeared. Whew, gone. No pain. The eyes rolled upwards spontaneously, and it was like I was looking out the top of my head, and I saw this spiral about that thick of sparkly gold dust. And it was a spiral that went, it went around small, and it was getting bigger and bigger and bigger as it went up. And my eyes were looking up at this, and noticing how it was spiraling up, getting bigger and bigger. And then my eyes rolled down, and I suddenly looked down, and I suddenly realised that I was above my body, and I could see everybody else in the room. And then I had this intense fear, like a fear that I've never experienced, intense fear, the fear of being out of the body, and then whoosh, back in the body. And then a real fear, a fear of meditating, right? So that's when I realised that awareness, the awareness that is so-called my awareness, that has a particular viewpoint, can exist without the body.
So in that sense, so it wasn't the watcher, it wasn't the observing psyche that had that experience. It was the temporal psyche, the construct.
Yeah, and it existed without. It could see without the eyes. So people that talk about, being able to, people that are blind, they can read with their third eye. Well, I totally believe that, because I could see, and it wasn't imaginary. I could see the whole room. And so part of us can exist without the body. And then you can also talk about, other people who report these children some children, they've, basically say that, my name is not this when they're really, really young. Their name is that, and that they can speak German, and they look in books and they say, I used to fly that's my plane. I know that plane, I can fly that plane. And then they research all the details that this tiny child who can barely speak is saying. Turns out that there was a person that existed in the Second World War that flew those planes, that did these things, that has a history, and it has that name. And so if that's true, that if reincarnation is true, then that means that that child then had certain memories carried on from a previous life. So that means I think that I was debating this with Kavita, actually, not debating, we were talking about it, and we were saying, well, imagine if you could remember, hundreds or thousands of lives' memories.
Like the Bene Gesserit.
It would just be too much.
Have you read Dune?
Just way too much.
Have you read Dune? Frank Herbert?
Yeah.
Yeah, like the Bene Gesserit. Yeah, right?
Yeah. It'd just be way too much. And the child would be so confused as to about how to be here now, let's say.
Yeah. Or not, maybe with that memory, it just seems like a natural thing, not like your experience, like moving out. There are lots of stories about accidentally leaving your temporal body and the realm of Cthulhu and, the malevolent spirits that try to take your body, like other entities that, that in common stories, it's a risky situation to put yourself in without training and knowledge. But the past lives, I think it's interesting, isn't it? What is travelled across, because then that makes the construct and the observer, they're not really separable, are they?
Well, I just thinking about it now.
Beyond our current understanding, I think, but it seems to me that they must have some relationship that binds them together. Maybe we're cleverer than we think we are. I don't know.
Well, I think about the observer and the and the constructed me being bound together. I think have to say that that's true for the current awareness. But I think, there are experiences where there is no me and there is no constructed me. So I've had experiences of that.
Do you know that some people don't have an internal dialogue? Like, I have a voice that goes on in my head that sometimes repeats phrases and talks to me, and I talk back. But some people, I understand. Do you have that voice that does that?
Internal dialogue.
Yeah.
It's more like running different thought experiments.
But it's a voice. It uses your language.
I can do the thing where I'll write down a question, and then I'll be able to write an answer, and that answer will be seemingly coming from not me. And that seems like a voice. But that's the only circumstance. The other circumstance is just basically think about one thing, and then another thought stream comes, and another thought stream comes, and just it's kind of like thought experiments playing out. I mean, I suppose you could call them different voices, but I don't identify them as different voices. I just identify them as different thought streams.
I identify them as voices because they're constructed using my language and my thoughts, and it's not an audio voice, of course, but it is a voice that's talking and uses words.
Yeah. And do you get the sense that it's that they're? Do you get the sense that they're saying that? Is it you that's speaking, or you feel like it's
it's thoughts being beamed in from a pizza? No, it's me. It's me speaking. But that's true. That other people will sometimes have the perception that it's not their voice that's speaking in their heads.
Yeah, I know someone who has that, and it's very accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which may be just another element of psyche, it's a powerful machine, and who knows, like how much of our conversation and our thoughts and theories, because can't be measured as such by a scientific metric, who knows how much of it is us creating a fiction of truth based on the history of thought as we know it. Like it's a...
Yeah. Well, I guess, out of all the choices of ways to investigate it, where I've come to is to really focus on the nature of awareness.
Mm.
That seems to be the constant, because I spend enough time investigating phenomena, what is a good decision, and making good choices and taking action, and then investigating, good thinking, and then investigating, emotions, and so that they no longer kind of control the boat, and then realizing that actually, following the rabbit back, it goes back to awareness, and then the notion of me dissipates. And so that's what I'm interested in at the moment, is the nature of of not me.
And is that how you define freedom? Is embracing that not you, or understanding or being the not you?
I think so. That's where I'm kind of leaning towards, is that because there genuinely is, when you're not coerced, when you're not pushed around to do this or that, or when you don't need anything, like there's no craving for this, there's no aversion for that, you're not seeking something, there is no need for any of that in sitting in the nature of not me. There is none of that's necessary, and there's a genuine, deep peace there, and a freedom to choose. Like if I want to go for a surf, or if someone says, I really don't like it when you do that, I go, oh, okay. or freedom to say, well, actually, I think it's important that I do that, and I'm going to continue to do that because of this. The freedom just to not have any resistance to things. And I think that's partly when let's call it the constructed me, starts to become a lot looser, a lot more transparent to the nature of not me, let's say, because not me doesn't have a boundary, doesn't have a need, it's not in any way, there's no need for satisfaction. There's no dissatisfaction. There's no satisfaction. It just is. And so if the constructed me kind of all things start to resonate or become transparent to that, I think there is a sense of freedom in that. And I wouldn't say that I fully understand it or anything like that. It's an ongoing exploration for at the moment. So, but I guess that's partly why I like these talks, and because it helps, to go on that journey. You mentioned before that you've been thinking about freedom a lot, and I was kind of interested to hear, where you're at with that.
I don't know. I started actually seeing a psychologist, a counsellor yesterday, because I'm struggling because I was free, and so I separated from my wife. We went through a divorce, and I lived in a stone hut on a river for 3 months and killed people's wasps for cash, and then had to be responsible for assets. And so I came home and I worked as a butcher in a charcuterie for a little while before I started teaching in a prison. And so then I started to follow through on the concept of my search for freedom was somehow sympathetic to creating opportunities for hope for a better future with the students I was working with. But I found that as time's passed and the jobs that I've wanted to do as far as settling property and working through and maximizing the value of assets and so on, that I've become fearful of the future. That now and that's why I admire what you've done, because I feel defined by my property, defined by the fear of not having if I was to pack up everything and go on a journey. And so, look, I'm still struggling with both. What does the opportunity for freedom look like for me outside of fear? Yeah. So it's a journey.
Yeah. Well, I think it's unpacking fear would help that.
Right? Probably.
And seeing the truth of fear could dissipate the engagement with that phenomenon.
Well, I see that that's what you've done in doing what you do. I know that you've taken a long time to set it up, to manage the risks associated with doing it, and you've managed your fear of it through that. But I've been managing other things, and it just come up to a point now where those jobs are almost all done, and I'm saying, what does freedom mean? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, is it at the level of phenomena? Is it having, not having? Is it feeling this, not feeling that?
Oh, look, it's all of that. It's all of that mixed in, the having, not having. I used to deliberately do things and maybe this is a sign that I've always been conscious of those fears. I used to say, I don't want to make decisions where I'm living into my death, like I'm living the sort of life and making the sort of decisions to create the sort of hospital bed that I want to die in. Like I want to get there. That's my goal. That's the goal of living. Who's going to be gathered around? Am I going to have family? What's it going to look like? What's the ultimate goal in life? So I guess I've always been conscious of it, but maybe it's just manifesting itself now because I find myself now that I'm without a family. My kids are grown up. My wife's gone. I just left a relationship with a beautiful woman who I love very much, but we're at different times in our journeys. And now I'm saying, well, I don't know what freedom even looks like. I don't even know for me.
It seems to me, and I resonate with that, and really talking about myself here as well, is that whenever we often engage in that question is where we're engaging, it's the constructed me that's engaging in it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't actually see an answer there.
No, look, the watcher me just wants to look at the stars and hang out and go and do interesting things in interesting places. But the constructed me says, just be responsible, will you, for what's in your life.
If I can be challenging there and suggest that what you were calling the watcher me is also just another aspect of the constructed me, because that exercise we were doing before, there isn't anything
that
to
it
do.
Wants. Yeah.
There's no wanting. There is no, you know what I mean? And so then the question is, how do you be, when we have the constructed me and we have the timeless, ever-present awareness of not me. How do we navigate? How do we exist in that? So I guess what I've been exploring is just sitting with the not me as much as possible. And that's not something that happens, because you kind of wake up to that, every, an hour or half hour or whatever, it's not, because it's almost like it's like you're in the movie and you get sucked into the movie and you forget that you're sitting in the chair, and then you wake up, I'm sitting in the chair. Oh, this, and the constructed me within this, what. But it seems to me that whenever there's any discord, remembering the constant me, not me, and experiencing that, there's instant peace. No matter what's going on in the world of phenomena, including thoughts, feelings, they're other phenomena. Feelings are just other phenomena.
And, even while we've been speaking, I've been trying to come back to the center of my mind, and I actually feel a sense of peace with that me, and I can recognize the observer being there as and it is calm.
Yeah, and just becoming more and more familiar with that, then more and more aware of the nature of that, and in the sense of, that it doesn't have any boundaries. There's no end to it. There's no center. There's no other.
But in our world, the fire still burns, and the necessities of life still need to be met, and that hospital bed is waiting for all of us.
Yeah, but I think that we, while we talk about being aware of not me, let's say, but yeah, exactly, we're still sitting here talking. It doesn't stop. The flow of phenomena doesn't stop. And it's not as if it's an either or. It's probably just, to me, it's being more present, more aware of what is, creating more ability to flow with it. And I'll give you an example. I was surfing a little while ago, and I was noticing that I had a mental construct that I'm sitting here because I'm wanting a particular wave with that shape to come here, and I'm waiting for that concept, right? And I kept on waiting there. I'm looking over there and seeing other guys getting waves over there, and I keep on sticking to my concept, right? And then I realised, hang on a minute, I'm imposing a constructed template on this phenomena. And then I let that go. As soon as I let it go, it was like I woke up, and my body just started moving, and I was looking and not thinking, and then I started to synchronize with what is and paddle to where waves were, and I suddenly became in tune, right, because I let go of the constructed template that I was imposing on, and that's basically then I realized that's what we do all the time. We have the constructed me puts a template onto every single experience and tries to manage it, right? And we think that that's the best way to deal with life and be sensible. But in actual fact, what we need to do is become more aware with take the filter off, more aware, and therefore more present. And there's more flow, and we can deal with the fire, we can deal with the hospital bed. There's no barrier. There's no, a delusory kind of separation.
That's so good. That's such a good analogy, metaphor. So good. Such a good metaphor for the decision and the freedom of it. Hey, Michael, do you know that we've gone beyond our 40 minutes?
Yeah, I noticed that. But I was enjoying our conversation. But you're right. We should bring it to a close. But I've really enjoyed our ramble.
Yeah, no, it's been nice. Yeah.
And so I really appreciate. Maybe we should even do it again.
Yeah, I'd love. Yeah, let's do it again. Absolutely. Happy to. Yeah.
I really want Mobsy to come on.
I know, but he said he wasn't. He didn't want to do it because he doesn't. There's nothing important or interesting about his life, Michael.
So he says, right? But whenever you talk with him, he's just so interesting, isn't it? He is so insightful.
He has got so many opinions. No, but he is pretty. Go on.
Insightful.
Yeah, he's insightful. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But I'm just going to let's just bring it to a close, and I just want to thank you for being here and sharing and engaging, and I really, really enjoyed speaking with you.
Thank you, Michael. It's been a pleasure to come on, and I was looking forward to it, a little bit nervous, but I've loved the conversation. Thank you. And I've learnt a lot. That last metaphor blew my mind.
Me too, actually. I just love the awareness that comes from just exploring these things together. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Bye for now.
All right. Bye.